Let's get to the day in the news, though. And as Alan's just been talking about, a disgrace has just happened in New South Wales, where the Labor Party and the Greens get together to change environmental policies, and the Liberal Party votes with them. The National Party votes with them. Mark Latham and One Nation, as well as the Shooters Party, did everything they could for the best part of a day to bring common sense, to fight on behalf of the customers, the consumers, the landowners, the citizens. Not the big corporations and not the big international lobby groups who sadly have got one hell of a win. And after a win like this in New South Wales, it will follow around the country. Mark Latham did great in trying to fight this, and even though the fight might be lost, his fight will never end. Here's part of what he said about the process that leads to New South Wales's Green New Deal.
So hi, you've got Matt Keane not even consulting with the federal energy minister in Canberra, his own colleague, not sharing the modelling. There are doubts about the figures that are used. Apparently there's an audit report on the modelling that not even the New South Wales Cabinet has been allowed to see. And it shows that the assumptions are dramatically optimistic. And we know from what Keane has said and what's in his bill, he's planning personally to levy amounts on the electricity distributors that they pass on to consumers, supposedly to fund the plan. So that's a new New South Wales electricity tax.
And you know how this works. They levy, you pay, and you pay every time. But just as the government was being hammered quite effectively by Mark Latham on this, the Premier, well, she was in a spot of bother herself. As you know, in the past 24 hours, it has been brought to the attention of people that she was worried about whether she had coronavirus. She had got a test, but she wasn't self-isolating until she got the results that ultimately would come back negative. Instead, she was in the Parliament voting, speaking and all the rest of it, something she got caught out about while talking about it on television just yesterday.
If I was an ordinary citizen, I wouldn't have had any symptoms, so I wouldn't have taken the test, but I went over and above. So if I was an ordinary citizen, I didn't have a scratchy throat, I didn't have a runny nose, I didn't have any, I looked at the website and I didn't have any of the symptoms, but I went over and above and took the test as through an abundance of caution.
But Premier, you broke the rules.
The whole point of this has been, and look, New South Wales Government and this Premier in particular has been very good about its messaging and its reality about not overreacting to coronavirus. But they have said to anyone who thinks they might have it, get a test. And if you get a test, stay home until you get the results. She didn't do that. Again, here is her trying to find some wiggle room yesterday on the very friendly territory of breakfast television.
Oh, look, that's all down to interpretation. I took a test which I really didn't need to, but I wanted to. And look, perhaps in that time frame, I should have shut my door and not let anyone in, but I didn't do that.
Hang on, here's your new excuse. If you get pulled over for speeding, say to the copper, well, it's just down to interpretation. Apparently that will get you off, because it seems to have been able to save Berejiklian from any significant embarrassment or consequences. But after this story was going on for 24 hours, after Mark Latham was calling them out about what they were doing in the Parliament, well, again, the distraction game of language was being played by the Premier.
I'm far from perfect, and I wish I could say that on every single occasion that I've interacted with anybody, or any of us have. But how easy it is, especially when I'm out in public. I have people come up to me and I put the elbow out, but it's very difficult to make sure that all of us maintain that level of social distancing.
And guess what also happened today? While the Premier was facing some political pressure about what was happening in the Parliament and was copping up for what she was doing personally, the cover of COVID was pulled out again today and new announcements were made about the easing of restrictions. The Goldilocks science that we know is bullshit when they turn around and say 4 kilometres is okay, 6 kilometres will kill you, 5 is just right. Last time she got into trouble, at the height of the ICAC stuff, guess what happened? To change the subject, they loosened coronavirus restrictions. And it happened again today.
I'm also very pleased to confirm today that a number of restrictions will be eased. In fact, my colleagues and I, in conjunction with the health experts, were able to go a bit further than what we anticipated this morning, which is fantastic news. So it means that if you're hosting an event at your home, you can have up to 50 people so long as you utilise an outdoor space. If you don't have an outdoor space, we don't recommend any more than 30 people inside the home.
Now, this annoys me. because very obviously restrictions should be virtually ripped in most places. But we are talking now about press conferences that are about changing the subject from scandal, where you announce things like, well, last week we said 3,000 people could go to a local regional country show, now it can be 5,000. Last week we told you 30 people would be allowed to come around for Christmas, now it's 50. You see, I've been banging on about this for a long time, and I get that it could be boring for some of you. But you are being played. The giant fog of the virus that was there in January and February and March made sense. We didn't know if we were going to become Wuhan or Northern Italy. But the joy of being the island that is Australia is that once we locked us off from the rest of the world, once we were able to put those people into hotel quarantine, and once we had contact tracing that meant we could be on top of little outbreaks, we don't have to play this game anymore. We don't have to play this game where everyone sits around waiting to hear what mummy or daddy leader tells us about what we can and can't do. Remember, next year in Queensland, when kids are dropped off to their first day at school, the kids don't have the virus, mum and dad don't have the virus, other kids don't have the virus, and other mums and dads don't have the virus, yet still on your first day at school in Queensland, because of the cover of freaking COVID, kids will not be able to be escorted by their parents into the school. Instead, front gate, cuddle, shove. Where, of course, they will meet up with kids who don't have the virus, teachers who don't have the virus as well. This is politics. This is about government telling you you need them. And I'm scared about where this is going, because too many people eat this stuff up. Too many people love this stuff, and too many people in power know that as soon as you use the word COVID, we treat it like it's a special at Target. One of those red lights are going on and we're distracted from the main game, which today in New South Wales was energy policy so over the top that the Libs, the Nats, the Greens and Labor all voted for it. And you know and I know, in 2020, when they all agree on something, it's bad for you. Good for lobbyists, great for Twitter. Good for the establishment media, but bad for you.